All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this joint resource recovery meeting for April 15th. So welcome to all the directors and alternate directors who are present, as well as staff. So we'll call to order at 1:01. We acknowledge and respect the Indigenous peoples within whose traditional lands we're meeting today. So we'll do adoption of the agenda. If there are no additions, moved by Director Watson, seconded by Director Woodward. Any discussion? Anyone opposed?
Chair, just a point of privilege.
Go ahead, Director Davidoff.
Yeah, we always do a sound check at the beginning of the meetings just to make sure.
Oh. Sorry about that. I can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. First one I've done, and I didn't think about that. Thank you for pointing it out. All right, and then if there are no errors or omissions, the February 18th, 2026 Joint Resource Recovery minutes have been received. So hearing none, those are received. So now we'll move into a presentation on the Resource Recovery Program. And Heidi. Welcome, Heidi.
Thank you. Just wait that. Can those who are online see that now?
If it's on the screen, it will be.
That's good. Okay. All right, so the purpose of this presentation is to give a general overview of annual resource recovery data and trends, and an update of progress related to the objectives in the Resource Recovery Plan. A few meetings back, a request was made for a visual summary of resource recovery in the RDCK. This summary simplifies the relatively complex system by grouping initiatives under the two overarching types of programs that make up resource recovery. Diversion, which occurs at all RDCK facilities, as well as within many community-driven initiatives, and disposal, which takes place at RDCK transfer stations and landfills. It also highlights where the different EPR programs are currently available. Should I leave room for questions?
Well, wherever you would like to have them fit in, wherever it makes sense to you.
Okay, there's a lot of data on some slides, so it might be best if people have questions, maybe just ask them at the end of each slide.
Okay. All right.
Based on the available data, 25% of waste disposed at RDCK facilities in 2025 was diverted, while 75% was landfilled. The 2024 Environment and Climate Change Canada report on solid waste disposal and diversion indicated that the average diversion rate in BC was 38%, while the national average was approximately 27%. Diversion rates are challenging to accurately calculate, as not all diverted materials are managed by the RDCK, and so data is not often available for other diversion programs such as private programs. This figure includes estimates for diversion of materials collected from municipal curbside collection programs based on data reported by Recycle BC in 2024, but does not include any private hauling of recycling, for example, that from the ICI sector. So the actual diversion rate for the region is likely higher than what's shown here. While the diversion rate shown for the RDCK is lower than the national and provincial averages, the amount of waste disposed and landfilled per capita in the RDCK is also significantly lower than the respective averages. So while diversion rates here are low, this could be due to lower generation of waste in general or other data limitations. The second figure shows the waste disposal by waste shed. A waste shed is similar to a watershed. It's a catchment area in which all waste is transferred to a common destination, in this case a landfill. 73% of the waste disposed in the RDCK was collected at sites in the Udashinya waste shed, while 22% and 5% was collected at the Creston and Nakusp waste sheds, respectively. With the closure of Nakusp in late 2025 next year, this is expected to change to approximately 78% Udashinya, 22% Creston. This is proportionate to the population within each of these waste sheds, indicating similar rates of landfilling in each waste shed.
Just through the chair, I mean,
noting the percentages Canada-wide, I'm just pretty curious if there's a difference between large municipalities and rural areas.
We aren't able to track data by municipality or rural area because it's collected at facilities like that capture for waste sheds. And so we don't track where the waste is coming from when it's disposed at a facility.
But I'm thinking more like in Toronto, Vancouver versus rural areas.
Okay, through the chair, please.
Sorry,
Yes.
supplemental.
Yes, and through the chair, I didn't look into that as part of this because it's a summary of our data primarily.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Director Jackman?
Yeah, thanks again, through the chair. So on diversion, I suspect we would have a pretty healthy diversion rate for bottles and the like that have monetary value, because we all want to support, whether it's the Lions Club or Community Hall, we have a pretty robust system of allowing them to collect alongside us. So the first question is, can we include those numbers in diversions? Do we have any idea what that number is? Because they're like the third party collector. But I think we have some way of monitoring and measuring what they collect. We're looking at what our local community clubs collect on our behalf.
Well, through the chair, unfortunately, that's one of the private data sources that we don't get that data for.
So could we make our numbers look better? Because I'll bet you we get a lot more bottles going to the proper place for refund because we support our local community groups than a big city would.
I can try reaching out to who we. I can look into it and try reaching out to it. I have tried reaching out to some of the other private collectors like Recycle BC, and they have declined to provide us data, which is often the case for private recycling collection.
Longpole. So through Longpole Pacific, I know that's who our Water Depot in Castle uses as their collector.
Yeah, it's definitely something we can try to add to this for future years.
Thank you. Any other questions in the room on this slide? And I see no one with their name in chat, so you can go ahead, Heidi.
Mixed waste comprises most of the waste stream received at RDCK landfills, although it's important to note that mixed waste can include some amount of other materials listed if not reported by those disposing of waste when they bring it in through a transfer station or a landfill. The diversion potential chart is taken from our 2023 waste composition study. Residual is the portion of the waste stream that can't be diverted. According to this, at least 46% and up to 65% of the landfill waste stream is considered divertible. 100% of recyclable, compostable, and EPR materials are considered divertible, while the ability to divert bulky and building materials is dependent on viable end markets and EPR programs available for these materials. As the study was completed in 2023, prior to the change in management of wood waste, the bulky and building materials portion of the divertible materials chart is expected to be increased from the value shown here, while the compostable component has hopefully decreased with the launch of our compost facilities.
Any questions on that slide? I don't see any.
When it comes to diversion, compostable materials, including organics, clean wood, yard and garden waste, accounted for just over 55% of the diverted materials. About 33% of the materials diverted fall under extended producer responsibility programs. This includes the EPR, depot, and curbside recycling categories on the diversion chart. As of 2025, approximately 50% of RDCK households have access to a curbside collection program for recycling. In that same year, RDCK depots collected about double the weight of materials as these curbside programs. This indicates that RDCK recycling depots are an integral part of the recycling program, even in areas with municipal curbside recycling collection. Depot recycling tonnages at almost all sites peaked in 2023 and have slightly declined over the past couple years. This decreasing trend in tonnage was primarily observed at Udashinya, Lakeside, and Creston Car Wash recycling depots, and is suspected to be due to increased participation in the municipal curbside programs in Castlegar, Nelson, and Creston, respectively. However, the data of these programs is owned by Recycle BC, who declined staff's request to share area-specific curbside collection data to confirm this. The tonnage received at Crescent Valley decreased in 2025. Some of this was likely due to the closure of the Winlaw Satellite Depot. However, an equivalent increase was observed at the Slocan Depot, indicating that most of the Winlaw materials are likely being recovered at this site. Smaller notable decreases were also observed at Crawford Bay and Balfour recycling depots from 2023 to 2025, but it was not possible to determine a cause with the data that we have available. Staff will continue to monitor site-specific trends in recycling to better understand the impacts of recent site closures and operational changes. The supplemental waste composition study, planned for 2027, will also provide data to understand the impacts of changes to service levels. ICI cardboard and recycling has been relatively stable over the past 5 years, and the organics diversion continues to increase since the program began in 2022.
Any questions?
Due to challenges with data availability for diverted materials, the landfilling rate is the metric that's typically used for evaluating program efficacy. This figure shows the RDCK's landfilling rate, the diversion rate, and the overall waste disposal rate, which includes the landfilled and the diverted waste, all in kilograms per capita. The RDCK's landfilling rate steadily decreased from 2020 to 2024, while the diversion rate steadily increased in the same timeframe. In 2025, there was a slight decrease in diversion. This was partially due to the change in wood waste management, as well as a decrease in tonnage collected at RDCK recycling depots, as discussed on the last slide. There was an increase in waste landfilled in 2025, again in part due to the wood waste management changes, but more than 50% of this increase is attributed to a general increase in mixed waste disposed last year. The province's primary waste goal is to reduce landfilling of waste to below 350 kilograms per capita per year. In our resource recovery plan, the RDCK set a goal of reaching 410 kilograms per capita by 2027 and 350 kilograms per capita by the end of the resource recovery plan, which was 2031. As stated in the RRP, achieving these targets is contingent on two critical actions to be undertaken by organizations outside the RDCK. The first is that member municipalities with access to RDCK organic waste facilities implement services and/or policies to ensure that their residents and businesses are encouraged to participate in organic waste diversion. Castlegar and Creston's curbside programs are successfully helping to achieve this goal, while Nelson is still developing an alternative program that will hopefully also help to achieve similar levels of diversion. The second critical action is the province of BC mandating the ICI sector recycling to include ICI PPP materials under the recycling regulation. Provincial data is collected annually from all regional districts to measure progress towards this goal. However, there's a 2-year lag in provincial reporting. 2023 data was just released in December 2025, which is why the dashed line stops in 2023 on this graph. The provincial average landfilling rate has been relatively stable between 470 and 500 kilograms per capita since 2015. The lowest was in 2016 with peaks in 2017 and 2021, and otherwise it's bounced around in between. Even with the increase in landfilling in the RDCK in 2025, it's anticipated that the RDCK's landfilling rate will be at or below the projected provincial average for this year.
Any questions? Director Jacqueline.
So, as noted in the slide, our change in what's clean wood, not clean wood is part of our issue. Is there anything else we can do with not so clean wood? Can we still, it's an industrial site, can we still separate it, ship it, distribute it over as part of the cover? Have we tried costing that out? Is that going to be 10% of what we need to do to meet our targets?
Through the chair. That's a question of A, efficiency, B, do we just want to look good? Because it's the long-standing practice, we have done it, but what has changed over time is that we recognize the risk of using largely wood-based as a cover, not having fire breaks within the landfill, and therefore our practice has changed to using a lot more soil and alternative daily covers. So we, as a result, intend and have in part already intend to reduce the shredding of contaminated wood, and only do it where we actually can make use of it. So materials of contaminated wood coming to Otashania where we currently do still grind. We still use it limited on roadways in wet weather situations and that. But the bigger question is, what do you consider diversion? To me, any waste ending up in the landfill consumes landfill's airspace and therefore isn't diverted per se. So yes, we can do whatever we want to. These are our data. There's not a there's some provincial reporting requirements that we meet, or Stats Canada requirements that lay some stuff out, but ultimately you can do this. In my experience, the purpose of this is measuring progress, and I've seen this in BC since my first job in 97, I believe, 1997, where that was exactly what's happening. People were telling themselves they're doing great by counting everything, including the wood-based pile they lit on fire and whatever, as diversion. But to me, the purpose isn't fulfilled. The purpose is here to establish a baseline and measure truly diversion away from the landfill and successes in reducing disposed materials in our landfills.
Did you have a supplemental?
Yeah, so and then on the flip side, we should say whether we blend it with cover or not, are we facing any shortage of soil for covered material at either Creston or Otashania, or have we predicted as you move up the hillside in Otashania, will there ever be a point where we need more soil or more blended?
Through the chair, the Creston landfill is in the lucky situation that we are building cells by excavating soils that we use for cover. So a very efficient method, it's close by, and overall helps keeping the cost down on that site. So there's sufficient cover there for a long time in the foreseeable future. In Otashania, it's a bit different, but we have the situation that we have received regularly a lot of contaminated soils with a contamination level suitable for cover purposes. So far the balance works well. We are in a land application situation that we intend to do once we have done all the pre-steps to that land application that could further help us with providing areas where we further can excavate soils. I would anticipate, unless the contaminated soils piece goes on forever, but I would anticipate that in 20, 30 years, we are looking at a deficit at a site like Otashania. Sorry, agree?
Yeah, if I may add to it, staff is continuing to consider other uses of, or end markets for dirty wood, though. They just had a meeting with the ministry about air curtain burners the other day, and so we are continuing to look. We don't want to continue landfilling it, but right now there's no markets and we're dealing with stockpiles of the stuff all over the place. So until we have something better, we don't want to continue building those. And then back to the data and diversion, Heidi participates in a few different groups on standardizing data collected across the province or with the feds, and she's been giving a lot of feedback when she does the surveys, and it seems like some of the data is getting a little bit more standardized, so hopefully that continues to be so that we're comparing apples to apples here.
Director Watson.
Yeah, thanks. Through the chair to Heidi, I think I know this answer. Probably can't do this, but I'm just curious, things like the mattresses where EPR programs are deficient in our region. I think the answer is you can't do this, but is there any way to track that which is ending up in the landfill due to lack of EPR programming or changes to the recycling regulation that make it difficult for residents to do it appropriately?
Through the chair, we have started tracking mattresses and some material types going into landfill so that at least we have data to show like this is how much of a problem this is.
Not great that, sorry, supplemental, not great that we're having to do that, but great that you can do that. Because I think that's a whole other story to tell when it comes to our advocacy around rural equity and servicing for these programs.
Thank you. And just a quick reminder for those online, if you have a question, please put your name in chat. So you can go ahead, Heidi.
My computer is froze.
Now what?
Do you want to use mine?
It's
Right on the scene.
yes, that is Ella's computer.
Oh.
I have this slide up, I just can't access any others right now.
Do you have it on the network?
No. But it's on the computer. It's just you don't have to do it before it's there.
This game.
But I think it's just hard the way it is. I'm sure it's fine.
Bring it back down. Restart.
You can use the file.
Make sure that's what I needed for is the speaking notes.
Both notes.
Go with what you can already have.
Yeah.
Just make something up, Heidi. Don't talk about it in your head anyhow.
On a lighter side, it's snowing. Get your skis out again.
Have to add the turn off to the ski hill. It was dry and sunny.
So weird.
Okay, so we gotta be careful about doing too much talking, because
Oh, sorry.
people online can't. That's all they're hearing is us talking over each other.
Watching snow.
Me too. Apologies. Okay, the province has an interactive webpage, which is the maps in blue, showing the annual landfilling rates by regional district. You can click on each regional district and see the full history for that district going back as far as 1990, as well as links to each region's solid waste management plans and any waste composition studies that they've completed. One thing to be aware of with the historical data is that the tracking and reporting have evolved significantly over the past few years, never mind the past few decades. So the data accuracy generally decreases with age from today. The RDCK's landfilling rate is on the lower end relative to other regional districts across the province, ranking 4th out of the 20 regional districts with a population of less than 100,000. While population doesn't appear to correlate with any specific patterns in landfilling rates, the challenges in waste management experienced in rural areas are much different than those in urban areas. Areas with lower population densities generally have much less waste management funding due to smaller, more dispersed tax base and less access to diversion services, many of which are centralized in larger centers like the Lower Mainland, yet they're held to the same regulatory standards as those with significantly more resources. Compared to the regional districts that were determined to be most similar to the RDCK in the system efficiency study, the RDCK has the lowest landfilling rate per capita. One thing that's slightly confusing is that the province calls landfilling rate the disposal rate. By definition, the disposal rate refers to all materials residents have disposed for management, including materials that get diverted. The province used to call this the waste generation rate, but has stopped reporting this as it's nearly impossible to collect data on all waste generated due to private collectors, as mentioned. RDCK staff sit on a CWMA-led advisory group with the province, and one thing we've discussed to help standardize data analysis and reporting is streamlining the use of clear and consistent terminology. Questions on this?
Any questions on Dr. Vandenberg?
Just the one, in regards to what you're just saying, is it possible that Central Kootenai just generates as a rule of thumb of that waste? Is that what you had mentioned?
It's
Or is that what I was to infer with the chart?
It's possible. It's really, really hard to know what waste generation is because there's waste going places that we don't track, like the private collectors, forestry roads, burning. And that's something actually that can happen more in rural areas and account for some of those differences as well.
Weatherhead, sorry, go ahead, Director Weatherhead.
Thank you. Just an observation when I look at this too is there any, I don't know, maybe, I'm just thinking we don't have big box stores. We don't have that same, sort of level of consumerism, maybe perhaps just about that.
I think it's Amazon though.
Yeah, no, that is a really good point. Commercial waste is a big part of waste generation. And so if we have less commercial generators, it could keep the generation rate lower.
Yeah, exactly. It is very likely the ICI sector that is different in larger municipalities than in rural areas.
What are questions?
Sorry. Cost recovery is a measure of the percent of operating costs covered by revenue generated by tipping fees, program incentives, and/or product sales, where applicable, such as compost. The remainder of costs are covered by taxation. As discussed in length at regionalization, in regionalization reports over the past couple of years, there's significant regional variability in cost recovery between the three subregions, which staff hope to further address through the service feasibility study to be completed later this year. The goal of this presentation is to share data and trends on the performance of the resource recovery system as a whole. The resource recovery, cost recovery was 55% for waste services, 40% for recycling services, and 13% for organic services in 2025. For waste, the general trend in cost recovery was decreasing until 2024, indicating that past tipping fee increases were not keeping up with the increasing costs to manage waste. In 2025, tipping fees were increased more significantly than historically, as recommended by the System Efficiency Study, resulting in a 15% increase in tipping fee revenue, and as reflected by the increase in cost recovery shown on the trend graph for waste. It's important to note that the red line showing cost recovery for waste services includes diversion of materials that don't fall under the Recycle BC EPR program, such as yard and garden, scrap metal, home appliances, tires, and clean wood. Because of this, while the RDCK strives to maintain a user pay system in which 100% of the cost of materials being landfilled is recovered through tipping fees, 100% cost recovery through tipping fees for the service as a whole is not realistic, as tipping fees for some materials are reduced to incentivize diversion, and as diversion programs succeed at decreasing waste going into the landfill, tipping fee revenues, and therefore cost recovery, will inevitably plateau. Due to this, taxation will always be necessary to support diversion within the waste services, and the reliance on taxation will likely need to increase as diversion programs become more successful. For recycling, cost recovery was relatively stable until 2025, when Recycle BC implemented tiered incentive rates based on depot sizing to help address urban versus rural inequities. Recycle BC has made further adjustments to their incentive schedules for 2026, so it's anticipated that cost recovery for recycling will continue to rise. The goal of the Extended Producer Responsibility Program is for producers to cover 100% of the cost of recycling of these materials. Staff continue to lobby the province and Recycle BC to improve EPR programs, accessibility, and affordability by pushing for more equitable incentive programs for rural areas and the inclusion of more materials, such as the ICI sector PPP materials. For organics, cost recovery has been increasing with program uptake and the sale of compost materials in 2025. However, because tipping fees for organics are planned to stay lower than those for mixed waste to incentivize diversion of this material, it's expected that tax requisitions will continue to cover a significant portion of the cost for this program.
Questions? I don't see any. Oh, no, sorry, Director Lockwood does have a question.
Sorry, couldn't press it. Through the chair to staff. With the organics and it looking like it's going up, is it true that we don't have organics to sell this year? Because we've sold everything? It's just a rumor out there. Somebody asked me and I'm like, I don't know. I'll ask.
As it's through the chair, we have sold all of the screened material, and we don't plan on having the screener back until later in the year, so we'll have sales again in the fall.
Okay, that's
Taking quite a bit more material than last year.
Thank you.
Don't see any other questions, so go ahead.
The current resource recovery plan is intended to guide waste management in the RDCK from 2021 to 2031. So this part of the presentation is to provide an update on progress made over the past 4.5 years since the resource recovery plan was submitted to the ministry. Of the 62 objectives listed in the resource recovery plan, 44% are complete or have been implemented and just require ongoing facilitation. 32% are in progress, 18% are yet to be started, and 6% are abandoned or deferred. All right, I have to restart every slide.
How many slides? So
Yeah.
we got that.
The tables on this slide and the following slides list the resource recovery objectives by area. The gray shading indicates the proposed timeline for completing each action item in the resource recovery plan, while the blue shading indicates updated timeframes for actions that are not yet completed or in progress. Staff are making good progress through the regional objectives in the resource recovery plan, with 82% of these being complete, ongoing, or in progress, with less than 5 years into the plan. The two actions that have not yet been started, the cost-benefit analysis of yard and garden waste and the development of an education and outreach strategy, have been pushed back due to staff workloads, but are anticipated to be completed within the planned timeframe. The objectives to support and establish a regional curbside collection program in electoral areas has been abandoned due to lack of public support, as demonstrated via the failed referendum in 2023.
Any questions on the last two slides? No, I'm not seeing any.
Well, the next few slides I'll go through by the sub-regional objectives. In the East sub-region, 71% of the objectives have been initiated and or completed less than 5 years into the plan. Most of the delays from the proposed schedule were related to shortages in staffing resources early in the plan period, or due to delays in the acquisition of lands west of the Creston landfill, which were completed last year. Of those objectives that are not yet started, the Creston landfill design and operations and closure plan is awaiting an operational certificate amendment from the ministry. The application for this amendment was submitted last fall and included the technical justification and request for a landfill criteria exception for the basal liner and leachate collection system. It's currently anticipated that phase 2 of the Creston landfill has capacity to accept waste until approximately 2033 at current landfilling rates, so the closure plan will not be necessary till later in this RRP period, while the actual closure has been deferred outside of the timeframe of this resource recovery plan. Closure assessments for legacy landfills near Crawford Bay and Boswell were completed and submitted to the ministry in 2025. Litter cleanup and further environmental assessment is ongoing, and staff anticipate that final closure of these landfills will occur within or close to the proposed timelines.
Anyone from East have a question on this slide? See it? Go ahead.
Similar to the East, 70% of the objectives in the Central subregion have been initiated and or completed less than 5 years into the plan. The items not yet started are both related to closure of legacy landfills. For the Nelson landfill, the landfill closure assessment has been ongoing for several years, and next steps are pending decisions from other stakeholders at the site. For legacy landfills near Salmo, Balfour, Caslow, and Marblehead, closure assessments were completed and submitted to the ministry in 2025, and similar to those in the east, staff anticipate final closure of these landfills will occur within or close to the proposed timeframes. Based on the City of Nelson Council meeting in February, it's not likely that the City of Nelson will pursue a curbside collection program for food scraps within the timeframe of this resource recovery plan, so this objective has been deferred. Section 13 of the Resource Recovery Plan states that elimination of planned programs supporting waste reduction without the substitution of alternative approaches that will achieve similar disposal reduction targets would trigger the need for a plan amendment. The City of Nelson continues to expand its food waste dehydrator pilot program in lieu of a curbside collection program for organics and hopes that this will achieve similar diversion to a curbside collection program. The supplemental waste composition study planned for 2027 will help provide data to evaluate the efficacy of this diversion program compared to the curbside collection programs in Castlegar and Creston. And this will help to determine whether a plan amendment might be required for this.
All right, we have two questions. Director Jackman?
Sure, so on that curbside collection abandoned in Nelson, back when I said why not Creston, because we had an active, eager proponent, the Food Hub there, the local society that thought they already had the basis of such a program, because they were collecting food scraps from restaurants to feed chickens, pigs, other local livestock. So we are actively gonna go back to Creston and do the pilot there, since the pilot didn't go anywhere in Nelson. That is what I'm hearing. Or are we not going to try and do the curbside food scrap collection in Creston was always the most viable in my mind.
Through the chair, this is municipal that she's speaking about, so that is already underway in Creston. Are you speaking about the ICI?
The whole premise, and whether it's run by the city or not, I don't care. This town was the best town, I was told, to try and get restaurants and other producers of food scraps into a system. And I said, what about Creston? Because they were partway down that path. Are we now gonna go to Creston and try to implement that program? Using Fields Forward and the Food Hub.
So maybe, so the confusion I think is here that here's the reference to the residential curbside programs. The ICI is going forward, is in development, is actively being laid out as a, I think, 6 or 8 month period that we have where we do progressive enforcement on it. So that's happening parallel in all 3 regions. That's going forward, but this reference is specific to the curbside program, collecting materials in larger municipalities and as failed in the rural areas.
Okay, so this was only residential. Okay, the other one,
Yes.
ICI is, okay, thank you.
Director Watson?
Yeah, thanks. I'm curious, again, sticking to the organics program, we had noted, I believe in the resource recovery plan that we would explore, organics programming in Castle Area D. And I know we had that one opportunity, but it was a really short turnaround, wasn't enough time for council. So I'm just wanting to ensure that's still on the list, because I do know residents are actually asking, and there's a committee that's being struck to work on this in the village. And it'd be great to make sure that they're working with whatever data we have. And so the question is it still on the plan, and where would that be?
Through the chair, that is still part of the organics coordinator's work plan for this year. So rural is ICI and rural are both being rolled out this year. I just got a message from a representative from Castle to pass on to Matt, so he'll be engaging with them.
Perfect. That's the, sorry, supplemental. The Castle, I think it's the Climate Action Committee, the KCAP. Okay, great. Awesome. Thank you.
All right, and Director Lockwood?
Thank you. And through the chair to staff, I was hoping somebody was going to ask it in the last one and I wouldn't have to ask it in this one. When you see the brown streak and it's got some check marks and it continues on brown, some are got 0 check marks like at the top. Is it determined that that's just going to be an ongoing thing forever? Or do we have end dates? And my other question is the Nelson Legacy landfill closure, the light blue, is that the anticipation of when that's gonna happen? Is that year, or what does that mean?
Through the chair, yeah, so for where there's a gray boxes all the way through the end, it's because it's an ongoing program, so that'll continue to happen every year. So curbside collection is planned to continue happening in perpetuity, to keep those materials out of the landfill. For the City of Nelson landfill, that's an estimated update to the timeline, because we passed the gray box.
An aspirational goal.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Not see any other questions, either online or in the room.
So in the West Subregion, staff have initiated and or completed 75% of the resource recovery plan objectives in less than 5 years into the plan timeframe. The Udashinya landfill expansion is anticipated to be slightly delayed from proposed timelines, but the detailed design of this expansion is currently underway. A preliminary composting options assessment was drafted for NACUSP in 2024. However, due to the high cost per ton of current organics programs, further evaluation was put on hold while staff worked to improve the participation and cost efficiency of the existing programs. The 2026 financial plan includes funding for design and construction of some sort of compost facility in NACUSP in 2028 and 2029 respectively, so it's been delayed. Similar to in the other subregions, closure assessments for legacy landfills near Slocan, Roseberry, Burton, and Edgewood were completed and submitted to the ministry in 2025. Litter cleanup and further environmental assessment is ongoing, and final closures of these landfills is anticipated to occur within or close to the proposed timelines.
All right, any questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any. So one more slide.
The Resource Recovery Plan lists 5 specific monitoring actions for evaluating the ongoing effectiveness of the plan. The BC Disposal Calculator is completed and submitted to the ministry in Q1 of every year. This is the data that the province reports on their waste management stats page for all regional districts, as summarized earlier in this presentation. The baseline waste composition study was completed in 2023, and the supplemental is planned for next year to help evaluate the efficacy of waste management and diversion programs across the RDCK. This will provide data to guide future strategy development and prioritization. Compliance reporting for each RDCK landfill is completed in Q1 and Q2 annually. These reports are submitted to the ministry and made publicly available on our website once they've been accepted by the ministry. In addition to this, staff plan to build on the data and trend summaries in these slides and present this to the JRC and the Resource Recovery Plan Advisory Committee annually going forward. As per the BC guidelines for solid waste management planning, an interim assessment report should be completed 5 years into the Resource Recovery Plan period. As our annual waste data analysis occurs by the calendar year, staff plan to draft this report in early 2027, once 5 full years of data are available from when the plan implementation began. The Resource Recovery Plan Advisory Committee has not met since the Resource Recovery Plan was submitted in 2021. Staff will plan to seek community representation in late 2026, early 2027, to partner with elected and staff RDCK members to review the 2027 Resource Recovery Plan interim assessment and provide recommendations for plan updates if required.
Any questions? Thank you very much, Heidi. We'll put you on the spot again for a verbal report on illegal dumping.
Thanks, and through the chair. The Resource Recovery Plan directs staff to continue work with community to reduce illegal dumping and to pursue the development of a regional multi-sector approach to the mitigation of illegal dumping. A preliminary jurisdictional review on responsibilities related to illegal dumping indicates that mitigation of illegal dumping is a shared responsibility between municipalities and regional districts through provision and education of local waste management and diversion options, and provincial agencies through investigation and enforcement, as well as provincially run diversion programs, such as extended producer responsibility under the recycling regulation. When it comes to the actual cleanup of illegal dumping, this is technically the responsibility of the polluter when able to be identified. However, this is often not possible, and cleanup falls to the owner of the land on which the dumping occurs. Anecdotal reports and complaints indicate that most illegal dumping occurs alongside public roadways, up forestry roads, or on Crown land, the management of which is the responsibility of the Ministry of Transportation and Transit, the Ministry of Water, Land and Resource Stewardship, and the Ministry of Forests, respectively. To ensure next steps in the strategy development are data-driven, a local conservation officer supported RDCK staff in establishing a data sharing agreement with the Ministry of Environment and Parks to access dumping-related data reported through the RAP line in the past 3 years to help us better understand illegal dumping activities in the RDCK. Once this data is received and reviewed, staff intend to reach out to local staff in relevant provincial agencies to try and define more clear roles and responsibilities and establish an interagency approach to address illegal dumping in the RDCK. In the meantime, community groups like the West Kootenay Backcountry Wilderness Watch Society have stepped up to fill the gap and help keep lands around our communities clean. To better support community groups tackling illegal dump sites in the RDCK, the approved 2026 financial plan includes funding to cover tipping fees for waste disposed as a result of illegal dump site cleanups that have been approved by staff. Staff have attached an application form that must be submitted alongside photos to ensure that this funding is being applied appropriately. This form is currently being trialed with the West Kootenay Backcountry Wilderness Watch Society to work out any wrinkles prior to posting it on our website. Another action item in the resource recovery plan was to establish a reporting mechanism. Staff have recently registered the RDCK as an organization on the Trash Out app. This is a free app that lets citizens easily report and observe dump site details and photos with a GPS location. The intention of this app is to support the community cleanup groups, as well as provide more real-time data than what's available to us through RAP, at least until the interagency approach can be established. In coming weeks, staff plan to update the RDCK website with a new page on illegal dumping that will include information on the Trash Out app and the application form for cleanup support. Staff hope to meet with relevant provincial ministry staff in coming months and will return to the Joint Resource Recovery Committee with more information on the development of an interagency approach, as well as recommendations for lobbying the province if needed.
Any questions for Heidi? I had Director Jackson first.
Thank you. So through the chair, I think I just heard that you're doing a trial with that form, which is now a public document. You can grab a draft form to apply, which I've sent to the Sanko Community Association because he made a request to access that funding. So can they, through the chair, email you, or can I provide email? There's an abandoned camper, I don't know how much garbage around up Sanko Forest Service Road, and he's happy to help you try out the process.
I don't use the one that was attached to the agenda. I have a fillable version. That'll be easier.
Yeah, and so that was the other question, if it's gonna become a job form or something like that. Okay, because I told them, talk to the NRO, get the questions on the second page answered, and maybe they can be the first. So if I just do an email connection through ID, that would be great. And you're gonna get a lot of them before the summer, I'm sure. People are ready to rock. Thanks.
All right, and I'm sorry, I don't recall.
Carolyn Hunt from Preston.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you were next.
Yeah, okay, through the chair. I just want to clarify the role of conservation in this. And the reason I ask is, we have a homeless population in Creston, and some of them have moved out of the town perimeter and are up a forestry road. And it's an area that the people in the rural areas use frequently for hiking. They've had many interactions with conservation over the degradation of the area because of this community. And the response back from conservation is, isn't it better that they're there and out of sight rather than in the town community? And so they've come to council saying, where is the support? Because we had directed them to contact RAP, and so I'm just curious conservation's role in this, if they're supportive or not. They didn't feel supportive.
Through the chair, conservation officers that I've spoken with have been supportive of what we're working on. I think active encampments is a very different issue than an illegal dump site cleanup, so.
Okay.
And typically, I think they're hesitant to get involved in areas where people are actively living.
Okay.
From what I understand.
Right, Director Weatherhead.
Thanks, that was the clarity I was looking for too, because what was I guess a one-person encampment, but I have a film and everything, they just lost a wildfire, so they lit everything on fire. Now it's just, and our community forest is stuck with it on an FSR that we're trying to clean up, so I don't know if that's gonna qualify because it was somebody was living there for a while and then they lit it on fire and left. And then, but it's significant, like really significant, one. So would that classify as an illegal dumping, or does that put us in that encampment category? Yeah, yeah.
Through the chair, I think that this is something with like the broader strategy development that we'll have to define, and that's where the interministry approach would be really supportive, but I guess once nobody, like when somebody's still living there, from what I understand, it's our RCMP jurisdiction.
Yeah, well, that's already been addressed, everything's been addressed.
So once it's left behind at that point, it's illegal dumping in this situation. If they know who it was, I guess COs can enforce and issue fines, although if it's people who don't have money to pay fines, I think it's probably something that would fall under illegal dumping.
Okay, hopefully, okay, thank you, and that's in the next couple of weeks, just to, is that what I heard? Coming out on the, or do we contact you now?
We'll update the website within the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
It's all evolving quite fast.
Gotcha, thank you, don't wanna bombard you.
If I may, so, and Director Schmink has probably something to say in that direction too, but it is certainly a much bigger problem. So we have the illegal disposal, but the living on Crown land is a much bigger issue. We see it coming out of all areas. As Heidi pointed out, we probably need a strategic approach on that, because I would not be surprised if the problem is a lot bigger than we can address with the allocated funds that we currently have. And there is likely a need for a joint addressing of the problem, including the conservation officers, RCMP, and NN. And it is incredibly difficult to address issue. Alone the fact trying to remove somebody from a Crown lease that we had in Belfort took better part of 2 months to get through all the steps of having that person move on. So I think we need a bigger strategic approach, and I'm not even sure this is a resource recovery issue alone. This is bigger than just waste management, but we'll reach out a bit more to conservation officers and RCMP and see if there's any possibility for working together on this. But for now, what we are trying to address is simply a few known locations for cleanup, but we certainly will not control the bigger issue of homelessness, drug addiction, and whatever else ties into the issue. We just had before the meeting with Director Schmink a discussion about the fence in Belfort as one of the means to keep individuals out of that site. Like I said, it's a much bigger topic.
Thank you.
All right, so this is my speakers list if I've got it this way: Watson, Lockwood, Woodward, and Schwenk. And if you could limit your question, you're fine? Okay.
It's fine.
All right, thank you. So if they're specific to your area and they can be followed up with staff later, that it's best to do that. But if it's an overall question on the program, we can go ahead. Director Watson.
Yeah, thanks. I first, really appreciate all the work that that staff have done on this. Noting again, illegal dumping is our responsibility, but we're really good at taking on responsibility because we can. I think one of the fine lines I would recommend is we need to provide some definitions on what would be considered illegal dumping and what we can consider receiving versus not. I think part of that is the discussion around encampments and that falls into a separate category. Sorry, I'll just back up for a minute. I'm recommending this be a part of the web page that someone might go to so that they get what they can before filling it in, so that if they're like, hey, there's an encampment, it's got dangerous goods, don't call us, call the RCMP kind of thing. The other note is I think it'd be really important, like we don't take vehicles as far as I know. I've actually been asked quite a bit about vehicle impoundment and, you know, vehicles that are abandoned on the highway and why don't we go get them? So I think that needs to be clarified, that a vehicle being abandoned versus parts to a vehicle, quite different. So I think in any way to support staff not taking on the size and scale of what this is going to be, to put some limitations by a definition. And what can be accepted versus not accepted at a landfill, which I know is on another part of our website, but as much as our website is tried, it's still not easy to navigate. The other note I would make is a cap on, I assume we do because it's in the budget, but I think we need to be, like, I don't want us advertising this because it also suggests just go dump it in the bush and RDCK will come pick it up kind of thing, which I know we're not. But it's a fine line between saying we're gonna take on someone else's responsibility. And I don't ever tell people I give grants, well, public meeting, maybe I just did. But I think we need to, as per the budget, find a way to be equitable in that capping of how this is being done, because we just have so much land. And it's really easy to encourage behavior while trying to solve that behavior. No discount to you guys at all. Thank you for doing this and limit what you do with it.
Thanks, through the chair. I think a lot of those, I tried to incorporate some of the things that we cannot take into the form as well, as it'll flag us, and there's forced acknowledgements on the form that they have to acknowledge they will not dispose of any prohibited materials. But I'll make sure I define that more clearly on the webpage too, once we list it. Just yeah. And yeah, I'm really trying to streamline everything that we're doing to just meet the objectives that we committed to in our resource recovery plan. So that way, because that is a legally binding document, make sure that we're not stepping outside of our jurisdiction, but we're meeting those commitments.
So on that website, can we have at the very top, illegal dumping is the responsibility of the land in which that dump is on, or whatever you want to word it, so that we're supporting healthy environment, but it's not our jurisdiction. Just some wording around that, kind of what you ended up saying to the delegation, because they had the assumption that just because we do garbage that we're responsible to go and get it everywhere. And that's actually a common assumption.
Yeah, it's, to the chair, it's a tricky one because it's not, I feel like all of the jurisdictions, nobody is clear about taking on responsibility for that. And so it falls into this gray area where, I don't know, one of us needs to step up to initiate the process, to work together to develop a process to get somebody, like, to get it cleaned up without fully accepting that that's now our role.
I think the clearest jurisdictional statement is it's personal responsibility.
Yeah.
It's not.
All right, so we'll move on to Director Lockwood.
Thank you, and thank you to all the former people, because I had a whole list and a lot of it got checked off. The one thing that that didn't get checked off is, have we actually reached out to the province that own the Crown land to find out, us saying to them, we're taking on our responsibility. What are you guys doing? And the reason I say that is that there was some land in Salmo, or not in Salmo, in Area G, that ended up being Crown in the end, and the province was made to clean it up. And they did. And it was thousands of dollars. And it was somebody's home site that they died and the family just abandoned it, and it ended up becoming Crown land. So I'm just scared that we're taking on something that, as we have all said, is that we want to be helpful and we want to make sure, because this is our area that we play in, that the province is, this is part of their area also. And I think that they need to have some say in it. Some responsibility in it, not say, responsibility.
Yeah, through the chair, this is the reason that I reached out to the Ministry of Environment to get the RAP data, because right now, all of the information we have is anecdotal. And so we're dealing with this as complaints come in, and it would be nice to have aggregated data to understand this problem at large and be able to approach those ministries and say, this is what proportion of it is showing up as on Crown land. It just gives us a little bit more background before we approach them and point fingers, I think.
Did you have a supplemental, Director Lockwood?
No, thank you.
Director Schmidt?
Thank you, Chair. I was wondering if what's going through my mind is, people will go to our site as the end all. And perhaps we should be stating, here's the steps, here's who's responsible, follow these through, and then come see us. Because, like example, there are some provincial agencies that are responsible for some of this, and yet it says in their mandate they're responsible, and yet they're getting ministerial orders saying not to proceed. And I think, I hate to be political, but they should bear that responsibility as well. So if they say this is the mandate of so-and-so, but ministry officials in Victoria have said, no, we're not pursuing that. We should state that. If we don't, we're going to be wearing it, and we're trying to help, but we shouldn't be the only ones. And if we have to embarrass others, because that's how those items, like example, get cleaned up, is that once, for example, we had one with a boathouse or a sunken boat. It took hundreds of calls. But finally, they did step up when the local representative, or they have local MLA turned around and went, I've got to have this dealt with, and then they do. So.
All right, thank you. All right, our next item is operating hours adjustment at Weimer, and Director Lockwood, that has your name on it.
Sorry, I've been on two different computers. Is there not,
There's a recommendation. Do you just want to read the recommendation?
I don't see the recommendation, so yes.
Oh, okay. So that the board directs staff to reduce operating hours of the Weimer transfer station and satellite recycling depot to 1 day a month from May 31st, 2026 to December 31st, 2026 to help residents adjust to the permanent closure.
And if I can speak to it?
Do we have a second for that? Seconded. Go ahead, Director Lockwood.
Thank you. Sorry, I saw a hand, so that's why I asked. Thank you. The reason is I've heard comments within Area G is, so this is just going to close and all of a sudden one day it's going to close and then what do we do? And how do we retrain people? And this is one way of helping. It's to be able to get people to do different things. We've done it throughout the RDCK in other areas that we've closed, where we don't all of a sudden have what they're completely used to all of a sudden a day that is gone. So that's what my suggestion is going forward, is to help with re-educating people.
Thank you. So we have Director Jackman.
Yeah, I can't support something like this. I don't know what number of population increase or percentage increase there is in Area G. I know in Area A, a lot of people are just coming back. The last thing you want to see is the change. I thought we had a communication plan. We'll just carry on with the current schedule, and then through the summer, to the fall, all the people that are left there going into next winter will fully understand that there could be a significant change or closure. I don't think this is the time to have this kind of severe cutback going into the busier season. I know if you did this in area A, it would just confuse and upset people having that big of a change coming into the high season.
Director Cunningham.
Yes, this came up in the prior discussions and was turned down by the board. I don't know why we're looking at it again. In fact, the board passed a resolution to continue till December. I think we should do that, and and as you know, there are petitions from the people in Weimar that are showing how they feel about this thing, and we can talk over those kinds of things in the upcoming month. As far as I'm concerned, this just is a revisit of something that was already turned down. On top of that, as the second proposal, we have already funded this thing for the year. It's not gonna make a penny's worth of difference whether we open or close, because it's in there, it's in the budget. And I think that it's just, I can't understand the motion at all. I don't support it, obviously.
Is there any further discussion before I call the question? All right, so all those opposed? Right. So maybe we'll do them, just because we're even online and in person just for bodies, well, so I'll go around the room. Watson was opposed.
Clarification, is it all vote or is it,
Oh,
or is it just central vote?
it's a committee, so everybody.
Okay.
So, Watson is opposed, Tierney?
Opposed.
Opposed, opposed,
Opposed.
opposed, opposed, okay, okay, okay,
Opposed.
Opposed.
I'll vote. Yes, well, I can see where the table's going, so. There's opposed. But,
Okay.
well,
Director Bacall.
Opposed.
Okay, and then online, Director Lockwood.
I'm obviously for it. Yeah. It's okay. This motion was passed at a committee meeting before, and then it got to the board and changed, so.
All right, Director Vogel.
opposed.
You, and, Director Gordon.
In favor.
Director Marico.
In favor.
Director Pike.
Opposed.
And then Director Bullard.
Opposed.
Director Davidoff.
Opposed.
Director Hanegraaff.
Opposed.
Director Newell.
Opposed.
All right, so that motion fails. All right, so we will move on to item 3.4. And since Akane isn't here, Amy will take this one. It's the results for the request for expression of interest, REFO defaults.
Great. Thank you. Through the chair, there's an informational report on the agenda for the background content. The Eco Devos is something that's been in the resource recovery plan and the budget for some time. We've done a few different procurements for specifically the Creston area in the past that were unsuccessful to date. So this time we went out to market with a request for expression of interest to get information about interest in establishing eco depots in Creston, Castlegar, and Acasp. And proponents could show interest on one or more of them. And as we know, there's a lot of desire in the communities. The the hazardous waste events are very successfully attended throughout the area, and the Nelson Leafs Depot demonstrates a very good sort of cost effectiveness compared to the events. So there is certainly interest to move forward. The responses to the request for expression of interest were promising, very promising. We had 6 proponents submit some interest, and a number of them demonstrated experience or comparable experience. Some of them had locations, some of them were interested in trying to partner to find locations. So it provided a lot of information on what we need to consider when going out to an RFP. So the the update here is just to let you know that we're in the process of developing that RFP, make sure we're fair and going to market to look for this. And we expect to be issuing it as soon as possible. The overall process will probably take around 4 months or so. So later in the year, we expect to come back with the request for authorization to award and move forward on establishing these, hopefully with the start later in the year.
Thank you. Any questions? Mr. Jackson?
2 questions. The first is maybe very obvious. Was there at least one expression of interest for each of the 3 sites? If not, you would have flagged it maybe.
Through the chair, yes, sorry, there was interest in all the locations. Some proponents were interested in only one location, some proponents were interested in all of them.
And if I can lead to the second question, will your RFP make each one of these discrete or allow some form of combination? I mean, 2 of the sites are in west, 1 is in east. Are you thinking of putting out just 3 separate RFPs if somebody wants to bid on 2 of them separately versus allowing them at some kind of extra bonus points if they combine? You know how you're gonna do that yet?
Not completely confirmed yet, but what we've done on similar procurements where there's multiple sites is we put it out as one and allow them to bid on 1 or more. And then usually try and also add in some sort of component that if there's a cost benefit to the organization to have multiple locations done by one provider, we give them an opportunity to describe what that could be. Sometimes it's a bit hard to compare, but we would be evaluating each site for each service independently.
Director Weatherhead.
Thank you. This also, the other component to this, or if I'm perhaps not correct because it wasn't really here, but on the propriety of these being organizations that were going to benefit nonprofit, is that still in the mix of this? That should be a criteria, or is that not a criteria?
Through the chair, I don't believe that was a criteria to date. I think in the end it would be how can we get the most fulsome service for the best cost?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Any other questions? Director Vandenberg.
Great, thank you to the chair. Can I ask for Preston how many proponents of the 6? Is that something I could ask?
Through the chair, I don't know off part, but I believe there was more than half of them were interested in Crescent.
Okay, if I may. Talked about separating, we had a conversation on separating the RFPs, that sort of thing. Will there be preference in terms of criteria? Will there be preference given to a proponent who has the facilities? And is the facilities part of that criteria? Because you had alluded to some may have to find that location. Some already have locations.
Well, through the chair, we are working with our procurement coordinator to determine how to make this procurement equitable. And one of the things could be putting an offset value on it or something that's comparable to what it would cost for us to do in-house. And in the end, having a cost, there's still a cost to operate out of our facility. So we have to consider what, even if it's operated by a contractor or some other partner. So I think we have to build the RFP so that we're looking at it equitably. There are benefits to certain locations due to the access and ease of access to residents as well. And if it, so at this point, we're still still drafting the RFP and working out those details, I guess is what I can get.
But the answer to your question is yes, we need to differentiate between somebody using our site or using their own site. We have not determined what that differentiation is, what value or points or whatever in the evaluation we put behind that criterion. We likely will have to determine a little bit what site development and availability is in order to do so, but it certainly is a difference between a bid that says we need your site to develop it versus somebody saying, I have the land with good traffic access, blah, blah, blah.
Just
More supplemental?
sure, Ken.
Yeah.
It's committee. Yes, that was important to put forward because I know that we've had a challenge in Preston. And now, we don't, but we need to be confident that our criteria doesn't take away that opportunity to get that problem, taken care of.
If I may, certainly location plays into it. We had previous proposals where the proposed land was in a floodplain, things like that, right? So there's multiple considerations in the overall picture. That is what makes drafting the request for proposals so difficult to develop a fair evaluation matrix that takes all of that into consideration and get the best value out of that process.
Further questions before we move to the next item? All right, so we'll move on to 3.5, City of Nelson requests. Amy again.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, Research Kirby staff have met with City of Nelson staff a number of times, including on site at the Lakeside Depot to discuss location and logistics. So from what's been shared with us, the city is interested in setting up a bin that would be part of a commercial collection route. So if I don't know that who they're looking for their commercial hauler, but it would be a supplied bin from this commercial hauler, so that they can have the lids open and material more freely go into the bins. I think some of the current bins have been having some issues with the material taking time to get through the screens and stuff. So they're looking at a different delivery or collection method, but due to that, they want it to be supervised so that there's reduced chance of contamination and or precipitation getting into the bins and causing some issues. So they are looking at, we've got sort of our ideal location that we're looking at right now. They would adjust the fencing and take up space on their own property, not within the depot lease that we currently have. And construct a roof structure over the bins. So from our discussions with staff, including our operational staff, the request of the RD is to provide access to this bin, to open and close. Our staff would open and close the bin, but that the city staff would be responsible for arranging the bin servicing. That would be their own contract. Dealing with larger contamination issues, and any sort of maintenance of the bin, also assisting with education of city users through a variety of different means, including potentially coming down to the depot, especially during the early stages to inform residents. And the operational impacts to our staff look quite limited. And so we have been considering this sort of in an effort to help encourage diversion without a big impact to us. So really, we just wanted to make everyone aware that this is something we're considering and identify the operational and logistics considerations. And at this point, I think pending that all of those can get worked out, which we're still working on, the intention would be to move forward. And we've described that the Lakeside Depot will potentially be closing in 2027. So it's sort of a short-term solution for them, but I'll open it up to any questions.
Any questions? All right. Thank you. Oh, Director Watson.
Yeah, I'm just curious, so noting there's a closure effort, is there concerns over adding new uses to a site that is going through quite a complex closure process? Noting they won't talk about that, we'll just talk about is new uses smart?
Through the chair, there won't be any other site development or changes to the site until we move off the site with the recycling depot. Right now, we have the lease until the end of 27, and with the Roman redevelopment. We're in the process still of the highway considerations as to whether or not that site proceeds this year or next year. So I mean, it is something that they'll be educating the residents to come use this, and then when Lakeside moves away, they'll have to educate them to take it up to Roman.
And supplemental. I'm sorry, Amy, if you said this, who's hauling it to the actual, or is it staying there or is it being hauled to Central?
It'll be collected as part of a commercial route. I believe they're using GFL, but that's not something that I'm aware of, but they would be hauling it to Groman, and then it'd become part of our collection at Groman that goes out to Central for composting.
But we're not being asked to haul it.
Director Cunningham.
Yes, thank you. An interesting proposition. As you know, we pay for the Nelson site rather dearly, twice the regular commercial rate. So are we going to be recompensed or get some kind of funds out of this to help with the extra training and involvement and work that they have to do?
Through the chair, we haven't asked for any compensation because they won't be taking up the lease space. They will expand the area so that it is into their property. At present, if it is really just opening and closing bins, the operational staff feel like that won't have any impact. And we've been very clear with the city staff that, we won't be regulating what goes in there. We will provide some information that the residents can take away, but our staff are not going to be able to tell them what goes in the food cycler or various things, or ensuring that it's only City of Nelson residents that are using that. That's something that we can't be doing for them. So I think for what the ask is right now, it's fairly limited, and I don't know that there would be a need for a compensation. The City of Nelson is a big contributor to the depot operations as it is, and organics diversion is something we want to support, even if we'd rather see the raw organics come to the facility directly, but that's with none of our decision, so we want to support it moving forward with the community converting the organics.
Thank you.
If I may add to that, so early on in the discussion, it was the discussion started about having it on our current site, but the site limitations for space that we have led to us saying we are not able to accommodate at the current site with the current restrictions. It's already difficult from a traffic perspective. Anytime we have a hauling truck coming in, we have to stop all residential traffic in order to safely load and unload. So that's where it led immediately to the use of land adjacent to the site on city land to place these bins and have access to it.
Yeah, I sort of understand. I can even sort of imagine where it would likely go, right beside the last bin, and there's a little bit of a road there, I think. And I don't have a problem with that, but I do think about our staff. What about pollution on the site? Maybe people say food cycler and say, oh, I can take any kind of food and dump it in there. That's not what we want. And so staff is going to have to monitor this very, very closely. I mean, they do a good job of the rest of it, but it's going to require close monitoring. And quite frankly, I know it takes time, and I've seen our staff up there running around like chickens with their head chopped off. No, not that bin. This goes in there, telling people who either sometimes they just don't know, and sometimes they do know and think they can get away with things like, that really don't belong where they are. But once they're in the big bin at the bottom, they think nobody will notice. And I have seen staff delving into those big bins, taking things out of them that shouldn't have been and putting them in the proper place. And in some cases, the proper place is the garbage can. I'd like to know exactly what sorts of things the staff is going to be doing with the food sector stuff and how much staff at that time that's going to take.
If I may, this was part of the conversation to this point too. We clearly outlined that it is limited what our staff can do in regards to supervising these bins or what's going into these bins. So as Amy pointed out, limitation is opening and closing on the bins. If they have time, they may do an occasional walk back there and see that things are okay, but it is not part of the current job description to do an active monitoring of these bins.
I understand. I think if it isn't monitored closely, I think we are going to be somewhat disappointed with the results. And that's my part of area of consideration.
All right, thank you. So we'll move on to the next item and then we'll take a quick break after that. The verbal report on the Preston landfill, Nathan.
Hello, and through the chair. In September 2025, the board of directors approved a reduction of hours at the Creston landfill from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. To 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. each day, starting June 1st, 2026. The goal in adopting this hours reduction was to reduce operating costs at the landfill. The hope was to reduce contracting costs and RDCK staff costs. GFL was awarded the new landfill contract. However, as part of their new contract, there's no reduction of costs provided should hours be reduced. Cost savings in the amount of approximately $29,000 per year in RDCK staff costs could still be realized should hours reduction be adopted. In order to weigh any negative impacts associated with an operational hours reduction, staff reached out to the three main commercial haulers that utilize the Creston landfill: GFL, Tippett, and Waste Management. Staff also reached out to 4 businesses that regularly haul to the landfill between 3 and 4 p.m. Windell Tree and Yard, With the Grain, Full House Contracting, and Advanced Brand Source Home Furnishings. The potential hours reduction was outlined to each customer and feedback on this change was requested. Of the 7 customers contacted, 5 provided feedback. 2 customers had no concerns that any change would be manageable. 3 customers thought this change would have a negative impact on their business. Tippett regularly finishes their route late in the day and relies on the landfill being open until 4 so they can empty their trucks to be ready to start at 7 a.m. the following day. An hour reduction would make a big difference and they would rather see hours extended at the landfill. Windell Tree and Yard was mainly concerned with the removal of flat rate disposal of yard garden waste, as this has resulted in an increase in price to their customers. They felt that reducing hours on top of this would further increase customer costs and cause a negative political perception. With the Grain, thought this would impact their business as well, as they've been previously turned away at 3:30 p.m., which is when the active phase closes. Reduction of hours would further impact their business. Presently, the active phase is closed at 3:30 p.m. to allow GFL to finish compacting and place covers over the waste. As there won't be a reduction of operation costs from GFL if we reduce hours, we can keep the active phase open until just before 3 p.m., around 2:50, which effectively reduces active phase access by only about 30 minutes. This was explained to the customers, however, their opinions on closing early didn't change. So considering this potential impact to customers of reducing hours at the landfill by 1 hour, staff is seeking some guidance or feedback from the board on how to proceed. Option 1 would be to reduce hours as planned. Option 2 would be to keep hours as they presently are. And the third option would be to delay any decision on hours reduction, seek additional input or feedback from customers, and return to the board at a later date with more information.
Thank you. I've got Director Jackman and then Director Hotman.
Yeah, I think, I don't understand the roots and the hauling of all of these commercial haulers, but I know a bit for one, I'd like to better understand what impact it would have. I observe every time I drive into town early, curbside garbage with bags, not bins, highly vulnerable to bears, ravens, whatever, terrified, early in the morning. So it'd be nice to have some understanding as to, and they come a third the way up Area 8 right now, with the curbside, into Windell, and they go other directions too, understand. I would like to understand whether or not that would upset the cycle that they've established with their customer base, that they have to delay, say, an hour when they start their route. Does this mean we're gonna have more garbage bags torn apart on the highway? That disruption alone would be quite unfortunate, if that was the consequence of them having to wait, unload in the morning, and lose an hour in the morning for their route, their normal route pickups. So I don't know if there's any, to me, it would make sense to understand that better before we change the hours.
I'm just curious, in your feedback that you received, you indicated that some said, you know, even in longer hours.
Mhm.
So was there any indication that maybe a later opening to maintain that same reduced hours, but maybe a shift would work, or are they feeling like we want it open early and later?
Well, the feedback was, you know, stay open till 5 p.m. That's what they would prefer. But it was never an option. I'd have to check again. We did some analysis of this last year with, you know, looking at how many customers are coming early, how many customers are late on the day, that sort of thing. So, I could look into that further. I'm not sure we actually looked at, you know, just shifting and opening later and staying open till 4. But it's something to look into.
Yeah, through the chair, if I may, it's about how you left, because you might have, but I don't think the first hour in the morning I think it had fairly high traffic, because maybe a quick way to get there. I guess understand that there's frequently a lineup waiting at the gate for the site staff to work around to get in and open up, because I don't think it opens till 9. So if people aren't able to unload at the beginning of the day, they're there first thing in the morning to unload.
And if I may, and I would argue if GFL has tightness in their schedule rules, that they would do a morning disposal and need that hour in the morning. If they don't, the concern about the early closing could be compensated through an earlier start of the collection route. But one way or another, we should have a bit more discussion with Tippett. It was Tippett, right?
Yes. Yeah.
With Tippett about the needs that they have and what their routes are. But like I said, in most cases, you can compensate by an earlier collection start in order to make up for that. We will have that discussion with.
Through the chair, if I may as well. So normally we wouldn't come back and ask you the question again. I guess this one was really driven by moving it into the RFP, expecting that we would get a reduced cost from the contractor. When that didn't materialize, we wanted to come back and check that it still has a cost savings, but not through the contractor. And so it's less than we were expecting. So that's why we wanted to bring it back.
Director Cunningham.
Thank you, yes. I have a place that's just across the line in Newport. And that same problem as it happens up there. And what they've decided is to close one extra day a week. Because traffic apparently on Wednesday is way less than the other days. Monday's heavy after a weekend, Fridays, those kinds of things. And people do like to go to the landfill, people, of course, on Saturdays and down there Sundays and in order to be able to do that, they decided to close actually on Wednesdays and Thursdays. And it used to only be Thursdays, but now it's Wednesdays and Thursdays. It said we'd close an extra day, and that was a big saving. Nobody'd come. That'd be the end of that. You'd have your savings in hours, but you wouldn't have a shortage of the length of the day. As a matter of fact, you may even be able to extend the day for people to be able to come and have better service on the rest of the days. Just to suggest.
It's my response through the chair. Last year when we were looking at this, that was something that was considered, but there was looking at the data, there was no day that was slower than all the rest. You know, all days were generally, equally busy. So that would be a challenge. Not impossible, but to pick the right day, might be hard.
And I know that when they did that, it didn't hurt anybody in the length of service. And in fact, people adapted to change quite quickly. Well, it's just like a store, your favorite store being closed on a certain day of the week because they're, a certain religion or something like that. Well, people get used to that. And I think, in fact, there's the savings.
Certainly, the concern is coming from the commercial sector. Commercial sector can't afford to have the truck sitting for a day, so I don't think it will help the commercial sector to close one day instead of the end of hours. So, but again, we will have that discussion with the commercial sector partners that have expressed concerns and come back.
Director Vandenberg.
Thank you to the chair. So with what Willie just said, kind of just leads me into my thoughts. I was going to compound on Director Jackman. that some further questions would probably be in order to better understand, of course, the commercial engagement. They're motivated by convenience, by profit. So it's nice to further understand. I live on that Tippett route in Wendell, and I've never seen any issues with bags that appear to have been there overnight type of thing. So the timing and whatnot is critical to understand Tippett's point of view and being able to deliver that service. So you already pointed that out, and I will go into my other thoughts.
Thank you, everyone. All right, so it is 2:36. We'll take a break until 2:45 and then resume our agenda. No. Right. All right, welcome back, everyone, from the break. So we'll move right into item 3.7, the contract award for Castle and Belfer Legacy Landfill. So we've got AJ here to speak to that. Welcome, AJ.
All right, thanks for having me. So I think the report generally, through the chair, the report generally speaks for itself, but we did issue an invitation to tender to do some regrading work and capping work at Caslow, and then some regrading at Balfour. And McNally came in as the low bid, and all this work was initiated or came from the Sperling Hansen report on what was required to undertake closures at the historical portions of these two landfills. Yeah, and so McNally came in low with some of the increased construction costs and some of the overseas conflicts that's affected the price of diesel recently, which has made this a little bit more expensive than what we were intending it to come in at. But ultimately, I guess we have an opportunity to undertake these final pieces of closure at these two sites. We have a separate contract with Brenton Industries, who is currently undertaking minor grading, litter cleanup, and reconsolidation at Caslow and Balfour and Marblehead. And so they've finished Balfour, and they're starting at Caslow and Marblehead at the end of this week. And so outside of this kind of regrading work and the capping at Caslow, that work will be done in the next couple of weeks. So our recommendation is to award to McNally and undertake the financial plan amendment based on this tender price of $75,211. And again, just noting that the quantities for Caslow, that portion of the work is $56,000. So it could go up, it could go down. It was all based on drone survey, so there's a lot of grass there. So some of those, I would say these quantities are likely on the high side, but this contract would be a unit rate contract. It wouldn't be a lump sum. So if the quantities go down or go up, they'd be paid based on that. So with that, if there's any questions.
Okay, thanks, AJ. We do have 2 questions so far. Director Watson.
Well, I got a question, but I can move the motion because I'm good with the motion.
Okay. So do you need your question before the motion is moved, or?
Well, it's applicable to the motions, but I'll second the motion.
Okay, so moved and seconded, and did you have?
I do have a question through the staff too. AJ, I appreciate you noting that it's a unit price, not a base price. And so I'm curious what the threshold is. Should it exceed what we've allocated? Would that come back to us regardless because it would require a financial plan amendment? Or is there a limit to what we can put into this project?
Yes, so through the chair, so we have added a total kind of project contingency of 15,000 that totals up to that 112,097 that's included in the financial plan amendment. So if there was if any of the unit rates exceeded 15,000 between the two sites, we would have to come back and request more funds.
Thank you.
Thank you. My question was just about the discrepancy on the McNally bid and the JY contracting bid. Just interested as to how there can be such discrepancy for this job, and whether choosing the lowest bid is always the best choice, or are we getting less, or is it? I'm just wondering how that matrix is figured out.
Okay.
Sure. Through the chair, I don't know if I'm going to reveal proprietary information here, but McNally does have a property in Caslow that he was planning on stripping. He's got a road that he wants to put in, so he's got a bunch of surplus clay. So for him, this job is basically just a way of he's able to get rid of that clay. the second bid, Brenton, he's got some source of aggregate that he would basically be supplying. So basically the two local guys came in the cheapest because they have properties in the area that they can extract some of the resources from.
Okay.
The two high bids, JY and OK, are not located in the area, so they're basically probably looking for a source of aggregate, getting a price, and then loading it and trucking it.
Okay, that's very informative. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the motion? Anyone opposed? Don't do that. Not opposed. All right, so we'll move on to 3.8, contract award for the Nakus transfer station. Larry. And I'll actually put you Tom on the list, Representative.
Thank you, and through the chair. So the Nakus landfill closed in 2025 and the site transitioned to a transfer station. The landfill contract including requirements that are no longer needed to operate the transfer station. So the existing landfill operation contract was revised in scope and extended on a month basis until recently. We put out an RFP for snow removal and maintenance services for Nakus, Roseberry, and New Denver on one contract. And that was posted on the RDC website and BC bid from February 26, 2026 to March 19, 2026. The snow removal services contract language is consistent with all the language at all of the other sites in the resource recovery facilities, and site maintenance services that are included in this contract are only upon request, including diversion of material stockpiles, septic pond maintenance, and electric fence maintenance. So proponents for these sites could bid on any or all three as per their preference. So we did get 3 valid proposals for Nakus, and we received 2 valid proposals for Roseberry and New Denver. Roseberry and New Denver are not included in this report because the value of that contract is below the threshold, and that's been approved and awarded to another contractor. But for Nakus, the 3 bids that we received were from Global Roadway Maintenance Incorporated. They bid an annual estimated price of $93,197. Gun Barrel Consulting, their annual price was $145,050, and Arrow Lakes Aggregate was the third price, annual estimated price of $196,100. So references were checked, the bids were validated, and staff recommends that a services agreement be put in place with Global Roadway Maintenance for the period of May 1st, 2026 to April 3rd, 2028. With up to 2 one-year extensions.
All right, thank you, Larry. Director Weatherby.
Thank you, through the chair to Larry. Thank you for this report. I'm just curious about a couple of things. First off, there is quite a great discrepancy there, which gives me just led me some concerns, and on further investigation, Global Roadway Maintenance was a West Kelowna-based company with no visible affiliation in our region, and so that caused me concerns. And further look into the company, and they were not Better Business Bureau accredited, and stated quite clearly. So Arrow Lakes Aggregate is a company that is right there already doing other work. So I think they bid too high, to be honest. And but the discrepancy there, and just really not understanding the great distance of their company, what they must have affiliates, but we just don't seem to have any knowledge of those affiliates for such large equipment. We're usually pretty community is pretty aware of who's around. So I'm just wondering how it was derived that was the winner of this. Yeah.
One of their references was the BC Ambulance Services, which they currently hold a $700,000 contract, GRM does, for 150 sites throughout British Columbia. And the references were checked out, and they're happy with the service they received. So.
And thank you. So supplemental, then, do they have they have actual machinery on site, or are they gonna be shipping it back and forth from somewhere then?
Their proposal had equipment that would be on site and they rely on subcontractors for
Okay.
snow removal.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Director Popoff.
Yeah, just a question, through the chair. We do have that money allocated in the budget.
Through the chair, yes, I believe they did.
Okay, so I move the recommendation. Thank you for the questions.
As a seconder, Director Woodward, discussion. Did you want to say something?
I was just going to point out that we had 120,000 in the budget for this service.
Okay, thank you.
Director Redier.
Thank you. Do we concern ourselves with Better Business Bureau? Do we concern ourselves with that particular rating, or
Through the chair, I've never used the Better Business Bureau as a rating.
you don't use that? Okay, thank you.
So if there's no further discussion, call the question. Anyone opposed? Okay, motion passes. 3.9, contract extension for Woodlands Reduction Services and again, you, Larry.
Thank you, and through the chair. So Fraser Excavation Limited has completed 2 years of wood grinding services to the RDCK from September 1st, 2023 until August 31st, 2025. They are currently active in the first of 3 available 1-year extensions for the time period September 1st, 2025 until August 31st, 2026 this year. The contractor to date has achieved excellent performance and has maintained compliance with all contractual obligations. In addition, the contractor has indicated a willingness to extend the contract with no modifications to the terms and the conditions. The staff recommend that Fraser Excavating be awarded the second of the 3 available 1-year extensions for the time period of September 1st, 2026 until August 31st, 2027 for the maximum value of $147,600 plus GST. I'll move.
Moved by Director Woodward and seconded by Director Schmink. Any discussion?
Just because we had the discussion earlier about contaminated wood waste and grinding, if you look at page 2, the estimated volumes that we grind, the reduction in comparison to 2024, that's part of the saving we see through the measures of handling contaminated wood waste in a different way.
Well, so I didn't call the question, right? I don't think so.
It wasn't answered, I don't think.
Oh, okay. Well, we had it moved and seconded. And so, anyone opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Our last item, for business, it's a verbal report on refundable collection.
That's for Megan. Thank you through the chair. So back in the fall, we got direction to issue service agreements for, I think we had 7 nonprofit organizations at 7 locations. So they were the only interested parties as part of a request for expression of interest. So we went through to a direct award. Unfortunately, we only have implemented 1 agreement with the Nelson Car Share Co-op here in Nelson. They put bottles at Roman and Lakeside depots successfully. It's been going very well. They are I guess a corporation. So they were able to get all of the insurances required as part of the service agreement. So it took a lot of discussions and back and forth with the NPOs. They all had a liability insurance, but none of them had an accident related insurance, which if you're a corporation, it would be, and you had employees, it'd be WorkSafe, and they can't get WorkSafe because they're not a corporation and they don't have employees. So what that would be is a volunteer accident coverage, which is a readily available insurance. But you know, a lot of these NPOs didn't have someone like our corporate team does to describe what these insurances are, and there was a lot of misunderstanding about what was required, back and forth. And we went to MIABC about the insurance, we went through WorkSafe about that coverage, and so it's taken a lot of time to kind of go through the process of what we can do here to move forward, as there's an obvious interest in getting this fundraising activity going for these MPOs. So the corporate admin team, we went through a few different iterations. One of them was getting volunteers to sign waivers, which was gonna take a lot of management to make sure that everybody that was coming on site had their waiver filled out, and trying to maintain that and oversee that was concerning, as well as going through a legal review of it. So what we have settled on is, and we won't change the current one, we'll give them the opportunity to change later and double check that the requirements didn't come at an additional cost to them, which I understand hasn't. So but with the 6 remaining that haven't proceeded, we've provided notification that we'd like to move forward on a donation agreement. And so that, it has some wins and losses there. They don't have to have all the levels of insurance. I mean, that does mean that the liability sits with the MPO and the volunteers. Through conversations, they felt like they were fine with this and had some reasoning for it. So we're putting it to them as that this is a way to move forward, and we'll get their feedback and see if they have any concerns. It does mean that the RDCK we can't require them to do certain things. Essentially, we have this materials if we're donating it, and they can come pick it up. So some of the requirements that we had are going to be, we won't be able to enforce them as if it was a contract that they were obliged to meet these things. I mean, we can state things like they can only come during operating hours, which is part of it, and that's simple enough. Because it's a donation, we can't require them to supply equipment. So we're looking at how we'll move forward, and likely some of what's been happening at the car share depots here in Nelson is that the local bottle depot is giving them super sacks to collect the materials in. So we'll look to see if we'll have to supply them, or the bottle depots will do so, or what kind of arrangements we have. We were hoping that they would either come at the end of every day so that there was no refundables left on site, which attracts off-hour trespassing. So if that's something that's not being met, I think it'll be something we come back and look at, or find if there's room in the budget to install walkable. We've investigated some sheds and various things to hold the super sack so it can be closed up at night. There's a lot of these outfits that actually were just coming at the end of every day, and they're motivated to get these materials. So the donation bottle. So from our perspective, it could leave a little bit more for our staff to supervise, and it could eventually mean providing some infrastructure for it. But what it is in the donation agreement is that they're not maintaining the site as we would like it to be. We can get out of the donation agreement, and so that's one way. So if they're not coming and collecting them, or they're not keeping the area tidy, then we will no longer provide the donations to them. So we do have some ability to can require them to manage the site as we would like, but we will have to provide a little bit more involvement both from our staff side. So we did have the intention to move forward and do more procurements for the other sites. I think what we'll do now is just move forward with these remaining 6, iron out the bumps, and then before we move forward on looking at the other site. So I know that there's a few areas that are very, very keen to get these moving forward. So ideally we'll get them started as soon as possible. I guess the one thing that I missed on this item is that we have a resolution to do a service agreement with these outfits. So I don't know if we should look at amending that resolution to rescind it and then move forward with these donation agreements. So apologize that wasn't on the agenda, but I think that's something we probably should do to move forward.
And do that next week.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Any questions for Amy? Dr. Papa?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And to the Chair, I know there was one site that we were having an issue with, and that was the Crescent Valley site. Has that been resolved?
Through the chair, no. So the society has determined that they might not be interested in that proceeding. At that time, we told them we were still investigating how this would move forward. So now that we've found a solution, we'll have to go back to them and see if they would like to proceed, and if not, we would wait. I think the intention was that maybe what we'll do with that site is included in the RFP in the future expansion instead of moving forward at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Director Laughlin.
I don't know if it come off. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. My little screen's not working. Through to staff, it sounds like that there's been difficulties with nonprofits, although, because they're the ones that we're concerned about making sure that we continue with that. Are we not just expecting these people to just come in, pick up the bottles and leave the site? Like, I'm trying to understand, like, not leaving the site the way that we want it to be left. I'm not sure what that means. And so I'm hoping that it's not creating more work for our staff, where I know that it was happening in Samo, and literally the people came and brought their own recycling to do, and then they would pick up the bottles at the time and leave the site. So could I get just a little bit of what you were talking about is making sure that they leave the site the way we want them to leave it?
Yes, through the chair, we have had these sort of arrangements at a variety of locations on and off with, it's like the Lions Club or the Rotary Club or different outfits. And there's been a few occasions where their volunteer support wanes, and then we end up with a bin with overflowing refundables. So really what we want is, we don't want the refundable area to be overflowing. Like, we want the donations to be picked up regularly and to not create litter or attraction to trespassers. So that's really all that we're looking for there.
Thank you.
All right. So then we've got one piece of correspondence from the Recycling Council of BC. And then that brings us to public time. No members of the public in the room, and at least there's anyone online.
Public observer.
Okay, there's one member of the public. If you have a question, you can unmute and ask your question. I'll give you one more opportunity. If you have a question, you can unmute and ask your question. All right, so then that brings us to the end of the open meeting. So the recommendation is the open meeting be adjourned.
Well, I move we close the meeting to the public.
Okay, meeting be closed to the public.
Yes.
Adjourned after, okay. What we're doing here. Okay. Then by Director Jackman, seconded by Director Schenk. All those in favor? It's carried, so now we're in recess. Yeah.